right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the hearing to order. As directed by Manitoba Health, we're requesting people avoid close contact within 2 meters with anybody showing symptoms of respiratory illness, such as coughing or sneezing. If you're experiencing flu-like symptoms, we are requesting that you excuse yourself from the room. Please note, when you join the meeting via the Zoom, all participants will be placed in a waiting room and your microphone will be muted until the host tells you you are in the room. You can follow the hearing live via City Board of Revision YouTube channel. When your property is called, you may be allowed from the waiting room to permit to speak in respect to your property. Once you have been heard, you can leave the room and continue watching the hearing via the City Board of Revision YouTube channel. If any participant is currently watching the live meeting on YouTube, please mute your audio player. To introduce everybody, my name is Ron Merritt. I'll be your chairperson this morning. And to my left is Mr. Robert Buss, and via Zoom was Lynn Nesbitt. Our assessor this morning is Mark Colatrillo, and our secretary is Kara Balsha. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. We'll be hearing application for revision of the assessment rule in regards to the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested has been described in each application, and we'll limit discussions to those matters. The statements that the applicant or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anybody speaking in these matters must be sworn in. Please be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is supported annually by City Council and is independent of it, along with the City Administration. We make our decisions based on the evidence provided at the hearing and issue a written order that would be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decision in respect to application may be appealed to the municipal board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to application from exemption from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, it will be included in the board's order. In respect to the hearing this morning, we will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We'll then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the other applicants may have, and then it'll be the applicant's testimony, followed by questions. Each party will have the opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all evidence about the application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket this morning. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live stream recorded and will be part of the public record. I'll ask our secretary to swear in the assessor and swear in, we'll swear in the assessor, and then we'll deal with the first property.
All right, so for the record, Mr. Assessor, please state your name.
I'm Mark Colatrillo.
Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And Mr. Story, for the record, could you please state your name?
Sydney Earl Story.
Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
All right. The first property that we're going to deal with, 1500 Plessis Road. And Mr. Story, you are representing this property?
That is correct.
Okay, so we will first hear from Mr. Colatrillo. So you can take us through this property. And we have a 2019 and a 2020 appeal. So the floor is yours, sir.
All right, well, I guess we'll start with the 2019. So we're dealing with file number 20-872, roll number 0400-726-1540. The address is 1500 Plessis Road. The owner is Park City Commons JV Limited. The roll year 2019 with an April 1st, 2016 reference date. The assessed value under appeal, $7,283,000. Classification code 60, and liability is taxable. Parcel usage is neighborhood shopping center. A total of 2 buildings on site, 6 premises. The actual year built, these are new construction buildings. The strip mall or the strip building on site is built in 2018, and the No Frills supermarket was built for 2019. We're dealing with a total land area of 230,078 square feet and a leasable area on site of 39,059 square feet. If you flip to page 3 of the brief, you'll see some photos of the subject site. The aerial photos do not show the improvements as they are not up to date quite yet. But if you flip to page 4 of my brief, you'll see some photos that I took when I was on site inspecting the property. So you'll see that there's a standalone grocery store. It's a No Frills. Again, that's built in 2000, completed for 2019. And then there's a 4-unit CRU located closer to Plessis Road on site as well, with one of the premises having a drive-through, which is the Starbucks that you see there. If you flip to page 5 of the brief, you'll see the rental comparables that I used. I tried to put a focus on newer inventory, retail, neighborhood shopping center comparables. The newer properties tend to receive higher rents from the market. So I did try to focus on newer inventory. You'll see that there is a fairly large range. The last 3 comparables that you see on this list are grocery store comparables. So that was what I used for comparative purpose for the No Frills space. The range there, 1425 up to 1725. The leases vary in age and the properties vary in size, but they are similar in size to the subject property. The buildings, however, are older, but the range there is 1425 to 1725. In regards to the retail units or the strip mall units, we're looking at a range between $26 on the low end and as high as $42.90 on the high end. If you flip to page 6 of the brief, you'll see the income workup. So again, there's total leasable area, 39,059 square feet. You can see the rents that are applied. They range for the strip mall units between $27 or $26.62 to $28.12. The No Frills space does have $14.45 for the main floor rent, and there is some mezzanine space in there as well. That comes in with a lower rent of $7.71. The total potential rent for this property, $634,858. Vacancy loss at 5%. Expense, non-recoverable expense allowance, including management, 7%. Shortfall at $750 a square foot. To arrive at a net operating income of $546,250. The overall capitalization rate for this type of property, neighborhood shopping center, 7.5%. the capitalized and rounded value being the $7,283,000. Page 7 of the brief is just a summary of that income workup. Page 8 of the brief is our capitalization rate table. So what this table shows is the City of Winnipeg low and high of the range that we're looking at for specific property types. Again, this is classified as neighborhood shopping center. The low end of our city data is 6.75%, going to as high as 9.5%. Eliminating outliers in the data, looking between the 20th and 80th percentile, the range for neighborhood shopping center is 7.5 to 7.75. Colliers, as an outside source, does not provide any neighborhood shopping center rates. CBRE, however, does 6.5 to 7%, and Stevenson overall for retail had between 5 and 6%. So 7.5 being on the low side of our range in regards to the 20th and 80th percentile. Given the age of the property, it being new construction, it's understandable that it would come on the lower end of that range. Page 9 is just some excerpts from the Municipal Assessment Act, and that is the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm open for that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Story, questions?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Coltrigio. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well.
Great. Did you have an opportunity to inspect the property?
I did.
Okay. Interior as well, inside?
I did, excluding the mezzanine space. So okay. I was able to walk through the store and I was able to walk around the exterior of the property.
Okay. And I presume you noticed it's a no-frills store. It's a fairly basic building, concrete floors, pallets on the floor with merchandise. It's a kind of unique marketing approach. Would you agree?
I mean, I think it follows a trend lately of more, I wouldn't want to call it budget. I mean, there are shelves and stuff that have, in its form and function, it's not too different from other grocery stores. However, I would say that it's not as large as your large superstores and stuff like that. It's a little bit of a smaller scale grocery store.
You recall off from your inspection, is there a pharmacy on site?
I don't believe so.
No. How about a baker?
I do not believe so.
Okay. How about a butcher shop?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. How about ready meals? Meals to go pre-cooked to take away? It's called the ready section.
That I'm not certain on. My focus on the inspection was less on the products itself and more on the building.
Well, I think it's important to know what difference it is to some of your comps. That's the reason we're talking about them. With respect to is there an in-store coffee shop in the No Frills?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. And did you have an opportunity to review the lease?
I did not. So typically the owners do not provide the lease to us. And we haven't had a chance. If you notice in the brief, there's no income and expense questionnaire because it's a new property. That request hasn't gone out yet, so we don't have anything to show in regards to the income and expense questionnaire.
Okay. We'll just go to your comps, to your page 5.
Yep.
We'll go through them real quick, and then we can probably carry some of that over to the next docket. The very first one, 2615 Main Street, is a Manitoba Liquor Mart. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do we have a liquor mart on this site?
No, we do not.
Okay. And it's 7,000 square feet. It's quite different, and it's a government lease, a lease with Manitoba Lotteries, correct? Lotteries and
correct. Yep, correct.
What's the significance of Manitoba Liquor Lotteries lease as a comparable? What's it comparable to? Not to the No Frills, and certainly not to the small CRUs. So what is the reason it's in the comps?
Yeah, the reason that it was included is, again, newer retail inventory was the focus. Because it's a new build, the focus was on newer inventory. Now, it does differ in size for sure, and there isn't a liquor store on site for this property. But given the size, they were still able to capture a $26 rent. But yes, it was mainly included because it's newer inventory. Now it is one of the older retail that I included in my comparable list, but it was still fairly newer relative to some of the older stuff. You start comparing between some of the strip malls in the city. There was a lot of strip malls built in the 80s, and they're not very comparable to new inventory.
Okay, this was built in 2007, according to your document.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's hardly new construction. And are you familiar with any of the requirements or conditions of a Manitoba Liquor Lotteries lease?
I'm not.
No, okay. So you don't know for sure if that 26, if it's net or gross, you presume it to be net, I presume?
Correct, yeah.
And which 2579 Main Street, what property is that?
The tenant you're asking?
Yeah.
It's a financial services business.
Okay. 855 Regent Avenue, unless I'm mistaken, it's Cambrian Credit Union, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay. And how does Cambrian Credit, is there a bank on site of the subject?
No, there's not.
Okay. How does Cambrian Credit Union, what direction does that point the board? What's it comparable with either of the No Frills or Starbucks, let's assume? What is a comparison there? Or is there
again, it was just a focus on newer inventory.
Okay, and that's built in 206, so it's
correct, yeah.
Getting on as well. Okay, and then 841 Leela, I think it was PetSmart probably when you did the brief, but I think they've moved. Is that PetSmart? Or is that
No.
HomeSense?
Nope.
No? Okay. What is that tenancy?
Was a clothing outfitter.
Okay, and they're gone?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay, let's go to the next one. 2001 Henderson, also a Manitoba Liquor Commission, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, same arguments, hardly comparable to either or to any of the buildings on the site. 7 Rendiers, 965 Henderson, and 2575 Main are 3 Sobeys, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And did you have an opportunity to visit those Sobeys?
I did not.
Okay. Are you aware that Sobeys have a bakery, a meat cutter, and ready foods, that they have all the things I mentioned earlier that No Frills doesn't have? All 3 of these have?
They may.
Pharmacy? Yeah. Including a pharmacy?
Like I said, I can't confirm, but they may.
Okay. And then 1750 Unit 100, is that the Max Convenience Store?
No.
What is that?
That is a drug mart store.
A Shoppers Drug Mart?
Yes.
Okay, Unit 100 is Shoppers Drug Mart. Okay. It shows Max, but that's all right. Okay. And then we go down to the bottom, Unit 250. That's an RB, Royal Bank of Canada, correct?
Sorry, which comparable are you referring to?
1750 Plessis.
Yeah.
Unit 250.
250.
Very last one on your list, Mark.
Are you looking at my 2020 brief?
No, I think I'm looking at 2016. 2016, 2019. Your page 5 is a single page of comparables.
Yeah.
And you did mention that you said the last 3 were Sobeys. But that's in the middle of the brief, the 3 are Sobeys. 14, 25, 16, and 17. So have I got the wrong page?
Oh, that should be it. Hold on 1 second. Page 5. Oh yes, that's a coffee shop.
Like a Tim Hortons?
Yes.
Okay, so it is Tim Hortons. And Tim Hortons are, no, I won't get into it. If we go to the next page, which is your page 6, the model, this 1445 and 771 is model driven, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and there is a mezzanine, but are you aware it was installed by the owner, or by the tenant, and it doesn't garner any rent?
Well, it's not how we would. That's not how the assessment department would value the space. We don't really make a distinction as to whether the tenant or owner put it in. If it's there as an improvement, then we would apply a rental rate to the area of that mezzanine.
Okay, and you mentioned you didn't go to the mezzanine, so you don't know.
Correct. Yeah, I just was on the main floor of the no frills.
And it could be storage, or it could be staff rooms, or something of that nature.
Correct. Yeah.
And therefore, that's the reason for the half rate.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And just going quickly to the cap rate, what would be the reason? Do you have any idea why Colliers wouldn't have a neighborhood rate?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Would you have any idea why Colliers wouldn't have a neighborhood shopping center?
I'm not too sure what they were reporting on for that time period for Colliers at. I'm not too sure. In subsequent years, I think they do publish neighborhood shopping center rates.
Oh, okay.
But it looks like 2016, they did not have that information.
Okay. Okay.
Or actually, looking at my next brief, they don't report for neighborhood shopping for 2018 either. So I'm not too sure why, as to why.
Okay. I was just asking more out of interest than anything else. And with respect to the 3 leases that my brief speaks to, the 3 of the 3 Sobeys that you have on your page 5, 7 Rendiers, 965 Henderson, and 2575 Main, the closest to the subject would be Rendiers. Is that correct?
I believe so, yeah.
And Rendiers is on essentially just off the corner of 59 Highway and Regent, and it's next to Rona. And is that correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Across 59 Highway from Steinbach Credit Union and going east to former Safeway, changed their name now, but it's a Safeway store, and then a whole raft of restaurants. Is that correct? It's right in the...
Correct.
It's in a shopping center with a McDonald's, a Famous Dave's, and they're paying $14.25 a square foot, correct?
Correct. Yep.
So that would be, for all intents and purposes, that would be a reasonable comparison. Close proximity. It's 208. You were saying that 206 and 207 are new construction. If you look at your 2615 and 855, would be considering it to be reasonably new. The size 36796 is not dissimilar to the subject. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So Rendiers would probably be a reasonable comparable to the subject. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would think that all of these would be reasonable comparables. In regards to proximity, absolutely, it's the closest.
Yeah.
But it is older than the subject.
And how do you consider Plessis? It's like a secondary road. It's not a main thoroughfare, is it? Although it's becoming one. This is great stuff that this is happening.
I would say it's kind of becoming a primary or a secondary thoroughfare. The neighborhoods there, Lakeside Meadows and Kildonan Meadows, there's a lot of development along Plessis right now. Right. And there's lots of traffic. I've been down there quite a few times myself. It seems to be a busy area. I wouldn't say it's a poor location.
No, I didn't say it's poor location, but I'm saying that it's not on Regent, it's not on 59, it's on Plessis.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
And it would likely, and I'm guessing, but just common sense, it would have less traffic counts, less traffic flow, I would presume, than Rendiers has.
I haven't reviewed traffic count information, so it's hard for me to comment.
Okay. But it seems like a reasonable one we can talk about as a comparable. Are you familiar with the fact that this was a financial lease whereby the tenant came in and requested $3.5 million in landlord inducements and then built the building? Are you aware of that?
The first indication of that was in your brief, but I've yet to see a lease or anything to kind of hash out the details of that agreement.
Okay.
Typically, we don't include tenant inducements in our analysis, or landlord inducements or lease inducements. It's not something that we use to reduce the rental rates. Yeah. But no, I haven't seen any information that kind of details the inducements, whether it's free rent or construction built into the lease. It's hard for me to comment without reading the full lease.
So you're not aware of what inducements any of these tenants got?
Correct. So the first time I'm seeing any information regarding tenant inducements is through your brief.
Okay. And that, okay. And that could be the reason that you wouldn't have seen that is there hasn't been a question there yet because it's new construction. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yeah. Because they're new construction, we have yet to make the information request. These were supplemental values that went out following the addition of the building to the roll. Yeah. So yes, we haven't received any information that would detail any of that.
Okay.
At this point.
Have you had any experience doing any assessments appeals on any other no frills?
I don't believe so for no frills. No. Oh, actually, I did do McIver Mall, which has a no frills.
Yes, that's correct. Okay.
Yeah.
McIver Mall, the rent there is $8.50.
Pre-renovation, yes. Yeah. For the old Marketplace store, right before they were about to undertake renovations, they had a lease in place that was at a lower rate. Yeah.
At $8.50. You're correct. And then what they did is they spruced it up. They refreshed it. But that was after the reference date.
Correct.
Okay. So you're familiar with that, and it was $8.50. Are you familiar with Westdale, the newer one? It's very similar to this, the no frills on Westdale Shopping Center.
I don't believe I've been to that property.
Okay. So, and the Henderson Highway would definitely have better traffic counts, and McIver Mall's a pretty good mall. Would you agree?
It may. I mean, it is fairly north Henderson. I don't know how much traffic you're going to get north of Chief Peguis there. But yeah, it may. And again, without reviewing traffic count data, it's hard to comment.
Well, I'm just looking at thoroughfares, and Henderson Highway is a fairly busy street.
Correct.
And McIver Mall's been there a long time. The gentleman that you talked about, the people that moved out of their Marketplace, I think they were called, their position was we're too big to be a convenience store and too small to be a supermarket. We don't fit. And that's something that we should keep in mind when we're talking about these no frills, I suspect. I think that's all I have, Mark. Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Story. Ms. Nesbitt, questions of the assessor?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Buss?
When did these come on the roll? When were they completed?
So I believe the completion dates was late 2018 for the 4 CRU strip and January of 2019 for the no frills.
So they're all on the full year for 2019, 2000.
Correct.
I think that's all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mark, you had specified just recently that you normally request, I guess, some data from the owners in regards to, I guess, what the land might cost and what the building might cost. You haven't requested this material yet, or there's no field sheet? Is there not?
No, it's not necessarily data relating to what the land or the building may cost. I mean, we get some of that information through the permit applications.
Yeah, but normally, sometimes what you do is you request from the owners their position, I guess, cost-wise.
Yeah, sometimes we do. In this case, we don't have that yet, and the income and expense questionnaires haven't gone out for these properties at this point. Or if they have, the ones that we've received are post-reference and they could not be included. So we may have, I believe we have a 2019, but we can't really use it for the purposes of these hearings, given the April 1st, 2016, and for 2020, the April 1st, 2018. So not quite usable for the purposes of bringing them to a hearing and discussing them.
Okay, so your evaluation for the subject property is all market-driven.
Correct.
Market-driven via the model.
Correct. Yeah.
Any overrides at all? Any overrides?
I don't believe 2019 has any overrides.
Okay. So, so in your presentation, you feel as if the NOI is in line and the cap rate of 7.5%, which you're using, is in line?
Correct. Yeah. And specifically for the NOI, I mean, the best comparables are 1750 pluses. It's just up the road, same kind of general area. Newer inventory there, and they're able to capture higher rents as a result of that than older inventory in the city. And then in regards to the cap rate, given the age of the property, for us to come in on the low side of the city range, understandable given the newness of the property.
All right. I thank you. Any summation, either party, then we can go on to 2020?
I don't have any need to summarize.
And Mr. Chair, I haven't presented my brief yet.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Story.
I went all this trouble to be on TV, and now you're not letting me speak.
All right, we're ready for your presentation.
Thank you. I know it'll be exciting. Okay. A moment of levity. We need it these times.
I thought you covered off everything.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. It's 219, yeah. So, 219. So our main concern today, ladies and gentlemen of the board and Mr. Chair, is the lease rate on the No Frills property. Now, that particular property was built with a $3.5 million tenant inducement. If you go to page 3 of the brief, you'll see all the inducements for this particular site. And the top one, 30,000 square feet, that's our No Frills store. The owner demanded of the owner $115 a square foot, which is $3,549,935, and they went away and built the store. Now, what did they spend the $3.5 million on? Well, there's a very basic building. spoke to Mark. I think he's confirmed that. They're basically 4 walls and a lot of pallets, a lot of coolers built in, all surrounding the exterior of the perimeter of the store. We don't know in the 3.5 if that was base lease, base rent, if it was a cost of inventory, if it was a cost of the name. We don't know what it was. It's a landlord inducement, and it was set up on a 40-year lease, and it steps up $1 a square foot every 5 years, and it started at $15.50, just so you know. And so it's they're banking on the future. This particular developer is in the midst of building 700 suites in close proximity to these stores. So a lot of the new growth, 1750 in here, is driven by the proximity of this new development, which is was contemplated. On the Starbucks, it was a one-time inducement of $48,000. And you okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay. Our papers were just a little off.
Okay.
But it doesn't for the entire document, so you might have to do that.
Just a right click. Thank you. All right, Mr. Story.
Okay. So that.
Lynn, are you okay? Lynn?
Yep, I got it.
Okay. Thank you.
So we're looking at page 3 of our brief. You've got it, okay? The tenant inducements. So Lob, I'll go through it. I'll bore you, but I'll go through it because I like to hear myself speak. Starbucks is $48,000 one-time payment, and that was negotiated when they signed their lease. So they signed a typical premise lease, and then they got some inducements, and it's likely, and we have to see them first, and we haven't got the questionnaires yet, but it's likely that inducement is recovered in the rental rate. We don't know, but they seem we're not arguing the smaller units now because the main concern has to do with the no frills and the unique financial arrangements, not a typical market rent lease. The next one is Mucho Burrito, and it's $21,000, $15 a square foot. And Pet Planet, which is the only one on here, as I recall, that's not a corporate store. You know, it's another the National Covenant, and it has had rent relief. They haven't been paying rent, but that's post-reference here. That's a now. So if we go back to the first page, or to page 2 of the brief. So we start out, you can see on ours, the left side is our position, on the right side is the assessor's position. The assessor is suggesting $14 and $7. Now that, I should have asked Mark to explain that, but there were some changes in the assessor's position because he tried to match up with the BAs.
That's for 2020, Sid. So
That's
for
for
2019, if you go to page 6 of my brief, you can see all the rents that were applied to each of those premises.
Okay.
It doesn't quite match up to what you've got.
Yeah,
but for the board's purposes, they can look at my brief for the rents.
And also what we did is we sent correction 1 and 2 to the board to try to, because it was confusing because we had 2 different, which you and I talked about. It's not a problem. It's just, I don't want to confuse the board. So, but I'll go through this kind of as an overview and then it'll all make sense. So what we're suggesting is that $13 is a more appropriate market rent. We're here to determine what market rent would be. And that's considering the principle of substitution. What would people pay for space? And is the financial lease, does it equate to a market rent? Or did they buy inventory? Did they have their startup costs capitalized? We don't know exactly what they spent that money for, but it may or may not be more than the base building cost. So we're suggesting that $13 is more appropriate based on the market. We don't believe that we should be looking at the lease. We should be looking at what that type of tenant would pay typically for space. We've accepted the city's position of 50% of the mezzanine. So where the city is at 14 and 7, we're at 13 and 650. That's really our dispute today is is the no frills lease. Again, we talked about, and then we'll just talk now for a moment about what these types of businesses pay. Now, if we go to page 4, the very first thing we did when we started this exercise is said the priority will be size. Let's find something that's close in size. Let's look at location. Let's look at age, exposure, et cetera, And I've put in a decision we had on a something called Lucky's Supermarket, which has 2 locations in Winnipeg. They're almost the identical circumstance size-wise. If you go to page 6, you'll see where what we did with the at the hearing on Lucky's. The city suggested $14.90. We suggested $8.50. It actually came in at $10 and $5 was the decision, and we've attached the decision. But I'm only telling you this to say that this type, it's 30,000 square feet is the subject. This one's 29,000 square feet. It both have inferior space, which are mezzanines, and that's and 10 and 5 is what that decision. The next one, and we put this in because some of the comps are included. This is Northgate Shopping Center, and I handle the properties that we've talked about: Rendiers, Lucky's, McPhillips. I handle all those properties. I'm well aware of them. And the Save On Foods was a huge project that received massive tenant inducements. Their lease rate is $14 a square foot. Again, it's much bigger, 65,000 square feet, and the landlord was required to do extensive work. However, he did. You'll see as we get through into in this thing, there's others in there. Jollibee, which is a $41 build to suit turnkey. The landlord built it for Jollibee. And the other one was a fitness for life at $950, which is new construction attached to the Save On store, and it's $950 a square foot. So just to give you an idea what our market rents are. And then a page got in here, nobody knows, it's a mystery. It's my computer lack of expertise, but page 8 got in from another brief, and it can be ignored if you don't mind. And then we talked about the next one, and this is McIver Mall. And McIver Mall, as Mr. Triglio mentioned, he's familiar with it because it was appealed. It was the marketplace. They were paying $8.50 a square foot. Their lease came due. They chose not to renew at $8.50. Loblaws moved in, and I believe they moved in and then they renovated. And I think the renovation wasn't anticipated, but they wanted to freshen it up. But that on page. I can't see the page number. 9. Yeah, page 9, top, the first tenancy. You see it's $8.50 a square foot. That did step up. I'm not sure what the step up is, but it stepped up with the new tenant because they got an inducement again. Everybody gets inducements. So that's $8.50 a square foot. And that is a no frills. A little bit further. And then I have a rebuttal. Would you like me to do it now or after?
What is the rebuttal pertaining to?
Yeah, we're rebutting the Sobe stores, that the Sobe stores shouldn't be used as comparable without a comparative adjustment.
You can do it after then. You can do it after.
Okay. So that would be my position. We think that there is no, the lease, the unique lease is a financial lease. It's a financial contract for 40 years between landowner and the developer and Loblaws. We think Loblaws is banking on the future. We don't know how much of their building or how much of the $3.5 million was spent to build the building, how much for the unique interior finishes, the unique, they're minimal, but they're unique to the store. A lot of built-in coolers. we think that the lease is not market value, it's a financial lease. And the principle of substitution, people wouldn't pay more than the market for space if they had the opportunity. And we're going to show you in our in our rebuttal brief where there are more appropriate comps. Our biggest comp is $14.25 on Rendiers. It's a very, very successful Sobeys. I have the privilege of representing it. It's a great comparable with adjustment. And I believe it's 20 to 25% superior to the subject property. And that's based on the interior finishes and whatnot. And they're at 14.25. And I think 13 is reasonable for no frills if there's anything, if there's any comparable to a Sobeys or to a Safeway to full. It's almost a car is a car is a car, but a Kia is different than a Mercedes-Benz. And that's the case in this situation as well. So I will I'll pass it back to the chair for questions. Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Story, do you want to do your rebut for 19 and 20?
Yes, they're both, we're treating them.
So why don't we do the rebut at the end of the 20?
Okay, sure.
Is that okay?
Good. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Mr. Colatrulio, questions of the applicant?
I do have some questions. Okay, so page 3 of the brief, you're showing inducements. All of these are, I guess, considered post-reference, right? Any leases that would have been signed for the subject property would have been done after the April 1st of 2016 reference date, correct?
Oh, the building didn't exist at that time.
Yeah,
It was a
right.
field. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yes, it would be post-reference.
Okay, so the page 4, the board decision, you don't have a workup anywhere for that recommendation that was made by the assessor, correct?
Yeah, we had to work it out ourselves. We come within $2 at $10.06, and we're $10.05. I do have a workup, but I didn't put in because I did it. But,
Okay.
It was to show you that there was a reduction from the that rate down. And the only thing we argued the market rent, and it was based on location because it's on Winnipeg Avenue.
Okay, and in regards to that location, it is just the supermarket there. There is no other strip mall, CRUs, or anything like that.
No, nothing like
that. So that is
on the west side of it are all the Winnipeg Harvest buildings, and on the east side is an old hotel that's being redeveloped right now.
Okay, so it's less of a destination, I guess, than the Plessis location in regards to you may be going to the Plessis location to go to Starbucks and see that there's a store there and go into the store.
I think if you're Lucky Supermarket, which is an Asian supermarket, catering a lot to the Filipino community, I think you'd like to be on Winnipeg. And they also have another store that they have, I think you used as a comp, is on Jefferson, and it's $10 a square foot. So we have two Luckies that would be comparable, older, different location, same no amenities as the No Frills, and they're at $10 a square foot in essence.
Right. And I guess just differences in the location and age then, and size, obviously.
Yeah, if I were Lucky's, and we handle Lucky's right across Canada, they go where their market is, and the market is they've identified that north end of the city.
Now, in regards to Northgate Mall, that's 1399 McPhillips. I shouldn't call it Northgate Mall. It's kind of been demalled. It's more of a grocery store anchored strip mall at this point with some pad site strips.
Very much. It's a subject property on steroids. It's got 65,000 square feet. It's got Jollibee. It's got a whole bunch of. They did a magnificent job for $45 million. They were able to make it alive again. It sat vacant for almost 15 years. And thank God it's operating as well as it is. Save-On were very demanding, and the landlord had to have that anchor. They had to provide tremendous inducements, and they reconfigured the store. They, as you indicated, they demalled it. That was at the wish of Save-On. So the only thing I can suggest there is that Save-On Foods, their rent is $14, but that's whittling away tens of millions of dollars in inducements.
Right. So the Save-On Foods is located in an old Zellers location, correct?
That was initially a Kmart, then a Zellers, and then vacant for half a lifetime for most people.
And in regards to the Fit for Life that you referenced, that's space within the old mall, correct?
What happened is once they were in negotiation, no, that's brand new construction. They built it. The Fitness for Life is new construction.
Okay.
At the back of the building. And what happened is Save-On came along as they were into redeveloping the mall and said that all these food stores are affiliated with Good Life and things of that nature, and they need them all. So Fitness for Life is part of the I just said it. Good Life. It's part of Good Life, but it's a lesser, and they pay $9.50 a square foot.
Okay. Now, did you look at the rents for the strip mall that's right off of McPhillips there? If you look at the tenant list, starting with the Tim Hortons through to the Dairy Queen, that's one strip. Then there's a Booster Juice and a Jollibee, that's another building.
Right. They're all yeah.
Now, those buildings were completed in 2016. And you can see from the lease rates that you provide that there are higher rents associated with the newer construction on site there, correct?
Well, the Jollibee was a unique situation. The tenant desperately wanted them there because there's an Asian section in the food store, and the landlord did a build to suit. It was a turnkey, and they paid an above market rent for the site. The new construction I would refer you to because it's strictly square footage. It's a raw space. Is Fit for Life. It's $9.50 a square foot, and it would be very comparable to the subject because it's about 25,000 square feet. So I would suggest that that's indicative of market rent for that.
Okay, but not fitted up as a grocery store, right? That's just as fitted up as a gym.
Just in this.
Yeah, so level of finishes there would be less than the grocery store. You wouldn't have the coolers. You wouldn't have the equipment that's associated with running the supermarket, correct?
And the coolers are not accessible.
Well, it depends if they're fixtures or not, right? If they're built in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
So in regards to the CRUs, though, the Tim Hortons there, you don't show any inducement, and yet they're also getting $40 a square foot. So they're the end of the strip. There is a drive-through there with the Tim Hortons, and similar to the Starbucks that we have on the subject property, they're at $40. It's a very similar.
I'm not arguing that. One of the reasons is the Tim Hortons is non-arm's length. It's owned by the Martins family, who are the owners of the shopping center. They own the Tim Hortons.
Okay.
That's a non-arm's length lease. However, we're not arguing or questioning.
Gotcha.
We're just talking about no frills.
No frills. Gotcha. Okay. So I noticed a page here, 1715 Kenniston. You didn't really cover it in your presentation.
The magic of electronics, Mark. It got into our brief and we don't know how.
Okay.
We handle that's Linden Ridge Shopping Center, and that's a big box power center, and it somehow ended up in our brief. We don't know how.
Gotcha. I won't pay much attention to it then.
Maybe throw it away or just keep it for information.
Yep. So in regards to then McIver Mall, do you know the age of the mall, the marketplace? Do you recall the age of that building?
I'm going to say it's got to be 30 years plus. It was one of the first buildings the family, the Martins family, the malls the Martins family owned, and I believe it was 30 or 40 years ago. It's old.
Would you agree that it's built in 1979? Does that seem? Yeah. Yeah. So it is a bit older in regards to the subject, and like I commented on earlier, It was pre-renovation. I think you were fairly open about that when you were presenting.
Yes, yeah. I should say, I lived out there for many years, and I think that over the last 20 years, I'm going to suggest there's been new faces put on the building. It's been changed a number of times. So there's been a series of updates. It's a very busy mall, very successful.
And I believe that, I guess the only other comment I would have is in regards to the space within a mall versus a standalone grocery store, there is a bit of a difference, right?
You're talking about McIver Mall?
Yes, correct. So the no frills there is directly accessed through the mall.
Yeah, you can get through. You can get to it through the mall. Northgate. One of the conditions, which is very interesting, Save-On required that the owners demol it and not have access from the CRUs into the store.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it was an interesting thing, but no, as far as no frills, I believe you can access it from outside or inside.
Okay. And the rent that No Frills pays was north of the rent that the marketplace was getting, right?
Yes, they got inducements to get that I think what happened is the landlord participated in the refurbishing, in the new look.
But we don't have the details of that, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nesbitt, questions of Mr. Story?
No, thank you. The questions so far have been fairly comprehensive, so I'm fine.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Buss?
I think my questions have been answered as well.
Okay. All right. I think, Mr. Story, I see that the cap rates are both the same, so it's not a question of cap rate, and it's basically rents.
We are talking cap rate in 2020, but that's coming. But no, 7.5 we're accepting because it's new construction. We've been dealing with in this cycle in 2019 and 20, we were dealing with 8% to 8.5% on a number of retails we did. Retail has suffered, as everybody's well aware, and but we're accepting the 7.5 because it is brand new construction. And it was, just so everybody understands that this particular site was sold by the city of Winnipeg to the developer. It used to be the city works yard, and the city cleaned it up. There's some issues with environmental. They cleaned it up and sold it to this group, and it's brand new development on Plessis Road, and it's part of the reason for the interest in it is the build outs going around in Transcona. It's a lot of homes being built, but also right on close to the site, and on the site there's going to be 700 suites eventually if all phases are completed.
Great. Let's move on to 2020. So 1500 Plessis Road. Mark, whenever you're ready.
Yep. So it's file number 20-873, roll number 0400-726-1540. Again, 1500 Plessis Road. The roll year in question, 2020, with an April 1st, 2018 reference date. The assessed value under appeal, $9,182,000. Classification 60 and taxable. Leasable area is the same, 39,059 square feet. There is a recommendation here to reduce the 2020 assessed value from $9,182,000 to $8,851,000. That recommendation was arrived at by matching what was done on the BA for some of the premises and putting overrides over the modeled rates to match the business assessment rates. So there is a reduction just based on going through that exercise of matching the rents.
Is this as Mr. Story aware of this?
Yes, he was.
I'm aware of the amount. I'm not aware. Maybe Mr. Caltre, you can help us with what properties were affected by this.
If I had,
Mr. Story, are you in agreement with it, or are you
I'm
accepting?
not, I'm accepting it with thanks, but I'd like to continue on. I'm not.
All right. Then the floor goes back to Mark then.
yeah, no worries.
Continue on.
Okay, so again, page 3 and 4, photos of the subject site. Page 5 and 6 are the rental comparables. So I was able to include more newer leases, newer builds with the updated reference date. And you'll see that the rents for this type of space, newer construction, newer retail, they're higher. And it's just how the market is. Newer space typically gets higher rents. The older space tends to have lower rents. So there's a pretty significant range in regards to the rates that I report for just your standard CRU premises. As low as $29.75 and as high as, I believe, $41. Or I guess, as low as 26 and as high as 41. And again, I've used those same 3 Sobeys comparables for the grocery store. And again, they're older than the subject, and they range $14.25 up to $17.25. So it's just some additional leases that are included there for the board to review in regards to rental rates. In regards to the question regarding which premises, I don't have it marked down here, but I can tell you that the model usually doesn't come out with a clean $40, $30, $28 rent. So I suspect that those are the premises. And I can tell you that the no frills was initially a higher rent. The $15.08 is the rate that was agreed upon for the purposes of settling the BA hearing for that. So it was matched for the realty and applied, and that's why you're seeing the reduction over the initial assessed value. So total potential rent there, $685,000, $963. The vacancy at 4%. The difference between 2019 and 2020, the city changed its allowance for non-recoverable expenses from 7 total to 2% for 2020. So my brief reflects the 2% allowance. Shortfall at $8 a square foot. The net operating income here, $632,855. The overall capitalization rate went down slightly, 7.15%. The capitalized and rounded value then, $8,851,000. That's the recommendation. So page 8 is a summary of that income workup. Page 9 is the April 1st, 2018 cap rate information. So again, just going through the range of the 20th and the 80th percentile of city data, 7.15, which is what's applied to the subject here, up to 7.30 for the 80th percentile. Colliers doesn't report on it. CBRE 6.5 to 7, and Cushman and Wakefield does not show NSC as well. And beyond that, there's some excerpts from the Municipal Assessment Act. We won't get into that. And there's our standard 2020 Border Revision Addenda package. You guys have seen this a bunch of times, so I won't cover that. But that was my presentation for 2020. The only real change is that we added some updated lease information, some updated comparables that we could not use for the reference date for the prior file.
I thank you. Mr. Story, questions?
Yes, I'll just quickly go over these additional rent comparables. Most of them are from the 2019 as well, but there's a couple here I just want to bring to the attention of the board. 1586 region, which is halfway down the page. That's 7,300 square feet. That's a CIBC, is that correct? It's a bank?
Correct.
Does the subject property have a bank on it?
It does not.
Okay, and then the next one, 1377, that's Jollibee at Northgate, and that was a build to suit, all covered by inducement. That is Jollibee. Would you confirm that?
I can't confirm it. I don't have the lease to review and to see that there was inducement.
But that location is Jollibee.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then I'll go fast. 1615 Region, just down again, Boston Pizza. These are sit-in restaurants, VLTs, lounges, et cetera, correct?
Yeah, the 210, unit 210, that's correct.
Yeah, and what would that be? That's not really comparable to anything on the site.
No, there is no sit-down restaurants there on site, correct.
Okay, thank you. And then, that's pizza. Okay, and again, other than the three, or pardon me, would you agree that the three Sobeys that are in your schedule here would be the most comparable to the subject in terms of utility and location and visibility, et cetera, et cetera?
The grocery store component, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then, let's just look here. Shoppers, Drug Mart, and Anytime Fitness. Okay, that's fine there. Now, the cap rate. We've all heard about Amazon and what's happening with the bricks and mortar retail. You've actually shown a compression in cap rate from 216 to 218. You used 7.5% in 218, in 216, right, and 7.1%. How, and just so you know, the industry, the retail industry had lost 325,000 stores, or thousands of stores starting in 2017. And sorry, it was the wrong number I gave you. And it continues to lose at overwhelming rates of closures. How does the city justify, just from a common sense point of view, telling a property owner that there's less risk in retail today than there was a few years ago?
The cap rates are driven from sales, right? So the sales, if they occur and they indicate a lower cap rate for the 2-year period, the cap rates go down. Now, in regards to the Amazon comments, I mean, we're talking about a grocery store here. They're not really impacted by the operations of Amazon. There is a very minimal grocery component through Amazon. And then the CRUs are also food services. It's not really stuff that would be typically impacted by e-commerce operations like that. So maybe the pet store that's there would be potentially, depending on, they may have folks that opt to go to Amazon instead of the local pet store. But yeah, it's not really something that the cap rates come from sales, right? So if the sales indicate a compression, then the rates get compressed.
But you don't give us the sales. We don't have any sales.
No, correct. So the city
board, explain to this board how the cap rate, how there's less risk in owning retail today than there was 3 years ago.
Well, we're not talking about today. We're talking about April 1st of 2018 versus April 1st of 2016.
Yes.
And at that point, I mean, we're still talking pre-COVID. Obviously, everything after that point, we know kind of that there was some increased risk associated with those operations. But it's not just the city data here that's indicating lower rates. The CBRE shows 6.5 to 7. We're in at 7.15. If the sales indicate a compression on rates, it's just how it is for reassessment.
Okay. Thank you. I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Nesbitt?
I have no questions.
Thank you. Mr. Buss?
Yes, Mr. Colatriglio, on the rental rates that you've used for the units, those CRUs, there's quite a variation here from $28 to $40. And it wasn't such a variation on the previous 2019. Is that the reason for the reduction that you're offering, or is there some other reason that there's such a difference there?
Well, no, again, it was the rates that were So for 2019, the rates were modeled. And for 2020, they come in a bit higher for the Starbucks primarily. The Starbucks was kind of based on review of the assessor who did the work. The rent was undervalued based on the drive-through that's there. Typically, those units capture a higher rent. So that was contemplated for the 2020 numbers. Now, the reduction that you see is just based on matching what was used for the BA. So it's not. I guess you could say that there are rents that are overridden that aren't modeled rates, but it's mostly to just come to rounded, clean numbers that were negotiated for BA, right? So those were just applied to the benefit of the owner in most instances. So if it was low, if it was the BA rate was lower, then that was applied for the realty here.
Okay. That's all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I have none. So, Mr. Story, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll ask most of our arguments with respect to the, other than the Sobeys and whatnot, be carried forward from the previous hearing, so we don't have to repeat them all. If we go to our brief, we're going to do it differently. We'll start at the back and go forward. Let's go to page 20. I just wanted to go through some other lease comps. These are lease comps for 2020. The first batch is 2065 Pembina Highway, which is a neighborhood shopping center on Pembina by the university. And you'll see there's a Oriental supermarket there as well. And their rent is $10.50 a square foot. Marketplace, we've talked about $8.50 a square foot. Fitness for Life is the Northgate Shopping Center. We talked about that. That's $9.50. So again, there on that paper alone, the average and the median is $11.50. But on these food stores, you're looking at fairly low rates, and partly because I suspect that some of the landlords want them in there to draw people. They're anchors, and they draw people to the other location. So just I'll come back to this in just a moment, but we'll go to the first page of our brief now. We've already talked about the inducements. We've talked about the three stores. If we go to page 3, this is our brief, and we can see that, and this was the pre-adjustment from the assessor was 14 and 7. I've used 13 and 650. I'm asking that be treated as a market rent, primarily based on proximity to the Sobeys on Rendiers. It's a very successful store. It's just off Regent Elijah Modier, across from the tax department, across from Steinbach Credit Union, next to Rona, next to Safeway. It's got a McDonald's on the site. It's got a famous Dave's. It's $14.25. In addition to that, it has a bakery. It has a butcher shop. It has all these amenities, has a pharmacy, all these amenities that No Frills don't have. So if $14.25 is the market rent for a Sobeys, and 13 is not unreasonable for a No Frills, in my opinion. With respect to the cap rate, I don't believe that there's any cap rate compression. I think it's quite the opposite. As a matter of fact, it's getting more and more difficult to finance retail projects because of the projected future of retail, particularly in clothing, not so much in food yet. And Amazon, when we talk about their amazing growth, we talk about the assessors indicated, well, they're not really impacting on the food market. I'm going to suggest they're not impacting on the food market yet to the same degree that they will in the future. I'm sure that they'll be targeted as well. If I can, Mr. Chair, we can maybe just go to the rebuttal.
Absolutely.
Would you like that? Okay,
Yep.
it's on as rebuttal 3 on your data. I want to make sure that your screen isn't split. Is it on one sheet on your screen?
There's a second page, but it's blank on my copy.
Yeah. Okay, but you've got because what happened is when we this morning we found out that when we sent it over yesterday, but this morning when we pulled it up, it was on split screen. But if you're okay, I'm okay to go. So what this is, yeah.
Can I just interrupt you for one moment, just so that we're all looking at the same stuff? The panel members here in the room, I put the attachments in your folder. They're listed at the top there. 1,500 pluses, applicant rebuttal,
Yep.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Mr. Story, I've sent the same stuff to you, so you can tell what they're looking at.
Okay.
And Mr. Assessor and Madam Panel Member, you can confirm that you've received those emails.
Yeah.
Yes, I received them, yes.
Okay, so we're all looking at the same stuff then.
Right now I'm looking at something that says 1,500 pluses rebuttal and then rebuttal number 3 at the top. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And is that on a single screen for you? Or is it split?
Yeah, single screen, yeah.
Okay, then we're fine. Yep, we're good. Thanks. I'm an IT idiot. I think I have an older system than the city uses because when I send some stuff, sometimes it comes back to me as 2 pages, but we're working on it. Okay, so we'll start with that. There's an interesting, this is the type of space that would be available if you were looking at building a no frills in Winnipeg. Giant Tiger is similar. It's kind of a second level. I'm going to call it retail. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 6 Giant Tiger leases. They're in the 8. They're all under $10 a square foot. Lucky's we talked about $8.50 on Jefferson and $10 on Winnipeg. Lucky's is number 8, comp number 8. And then the 3 Sobeys are the only that what we're objecting to, and we're using the ones prior to that in the list, the Giant Tiger, IGA, and Lucky's, again for the food store rates. To that, you can add McIver Mall, you can add Pembina Village, and on and on and on, that they're all under $10 a square foot. So 13 is not unreasonable in my opinion. We can't be fooled by the financial lease because the financial lease may include inventory. It may include fixtures and equipment that isn't built in. Again, but the main argument is that a no frills is, if you're going to do a comparable, you would compare it with the Sobeys that have a pharmacy, and the pharmacy in the pandemic and just in people more concerned about their health, the pharmacy is a great income driver for these food stores. This No Frills doesn't have one. A bakery is a natural in a food store. A butcher shop where they actually cut the meat is a natural for a food store. No Frills doesn't have any of these. No Frills don't have an in-house coffee store. Safeway and Sobeys do. And they're $14.50. They deal with a different market. As a matter of fact, in Winnipeg, in doing our review of the Sobeys, the store on Taylor has a very large kosher section and has a ready meals section. So these are amenities and products. It's a different market. I indicated earlier that a Kia is a car and so is a Mercedes-Benz, but they're different. And this is too, and you need comparable adjustments. So $14.25, and that's been reviewed and tested. $8.50 in McIver Mall has been reviewed at hearings and contested. Those are reasonable rates. $13 is reasonable, I think. Again, it's new construction. There's a bit of a frenzy in that area because there's new pad sites opening up every few months. So I would respectfully submit that the board, looking at our page 3, ignore the face value of the lease because you don't have that information. The city doesn't know, it hasn't sent it out yet, the request for information. So $13.65, I believe, is reasonable for market rent, which we're dealing with, not financial rent, not this we have other types of industries, car dealerships, when they buy a property, they buy a dealership, they buy inventory and everything. That could be the case here. We don't know. We don't know what that 3.5 million was spent for. And the 7.5, I think, should be, there is no compression in cap rate. Cap rate should be going up because there's much more risk in retail. And when a landlord does a transaction of this nature, where they give the inducement and the tenant pays it back in rent, the landlord carries all the early risk. Down the road with renewals, the risk passes to the tenant, but in the short run, the risk is to the developer. So I respectfully submit that for 2020, that the assessment based on a 7.5 cap versus 7.15 is $6,731,369, and those are all my points. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, questions of the Mr. Story?
Yeah, I do. Just the buildings here, the Giant Tigers, they're not exclusively grocery stores, correct? They have a small food component, and then they sell clothing and other assorted household items within the store, correct?
Yes. They're not food stores per se, but they are stores of a particular size in particular locations that could be at no frills. They're based on size.
They're a bit smaller, right?
Smaller, yeah, and that would mean that the rate should be higher.
Now, in regards to the age of these properties, do you have the age of these?
No, but some of them they've mostly all retrofits. They've all been something else for the most part. Based on my experience, we do quite a lot of them, but they're all, for the most, I don't think there's any new builds for Giant Tiger.
Okay, yeah, that was my understanding, is that most
market doesn't warrant.
Yeah, they're older locations.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my only comment here. And the IGA as well, that's an older location, correct?
Elizabeth Road, yes, probably. I would think so. I don't know offhand, but I'm going to presume so. Yeah. IGA is around a long time.
I have no further questions.
I thank you, Mr. Pitt.
No questions.
Thank you. Mr. Buss?
No questions.
I think either party want to summarize?
I think I'm okay.
I'm all right. Thank you.
All right. So thank you very much, Mr. Story. And
thank you, Mr. Barrett. Nice to see you and Mr. Buss again, and the other folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sid.
Thanks, Mark. All the best.
Robert, do you need a 5-minute break?
Yes.
Okay. We'll take a 5 minutes. Lynn, you can grab a
Yes,
cup
thanks.
of tea. Mark?
That's great. Thank you.
Yep, no worries.
Good morning, Mr. Newfield.
Sorry, I'm just watching. I'm about to be attacked by a puppy.
Oh. Good morning, Mr. Newfield.
Morning.
Okay, we'll have you affirmed.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so for the record, please state your name.
Rocky Newfield.
Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
All right, you're familiar with the routine, Mr. Newfield, so we'll first hear from the assessor in regards to 1122 Henderson Highway, and the year is 2019. Mr. Mark, whenever you're ready.
All right, so file number 20-879, the roll number 04000436-200. The address is 1122 Henderson Highway, and the owner is Kildonan Village Limited. The roll year in question, 2019. reference date April 1st of 2016. The assessed value under appeal, $1,430,000. Classification is 60, and the liability is taxable. The parcel usage, neighborhood shopping center, 1 building, 5 premises. This is also new construction built in 2019. Total leasable area, 6,200 square feet. You flip to page 2 of the brief. There really isn't anything very relevant. The information requests that were made were based on the old improvement, which was an old office building that has since been demolished and replaced with this strip mall that was built onto this site. If you flip to page 3, you'll see the map view, the aerial photo of the parcel. The 1114 Henderson, 1122 Henderson, and 1128 Henderson are all owned by the same owner. They kind of operate as one single economic unit. That's the way that they've kind of reported things to us in the past. So hence the neighborhood shopping center classification for this property. Page 4, you'll see an aerial photo. However, the photo is dated. That's the old improvement that you see there, the old office building. If you flip to page 5, you'll see the new building. It's kind of an L-shaped strip, 5 units, 6,200 square feet total leasable area. If you flip to page 6 of the brief, you'll see some of the rent comparables. So I broke down the rental comparables into 2 categories. First category being the comparables in the immediate area along Henderson Highway. I've drawn some of the rents from 1128 Henderson. And then there's some rents there from 1046 Henderson and 1050 Henderson. That's rents for older inventory in the immediate area. The range here, $17.50 to $22 a square foot. If you flip to page 7, considering the fact that this is new inventory, I provided a table of new inventory comparables. And you'll notice that the rents indicate a bit of a higher range, as low as $19 and as high as $34 a square foot. If you flip to page 8 of the brief, you'll see the income workup, and the workup was produced by the model for this space. There is a significant difference in the rent associated with the restaurant premise. It is higher in our model than the other units. $18.21 for the 1,200 square foot CRU premises, $18.02 for the 1,400 square foot, and then the restaurant coming in at $27.72. It's a Freshie food service on the corner of the strip mall there. And in reviewing the comparables, the $18.21, I mean, that matches the old inventory that's in the immediate area. For new space, it is a little low, but at this point, we're not looking to change any of the modeled rates. The $27 definitely is higher, but it's more in the range that you see for the newer inventory. The total potential rent here, $124,048. Vacancy at 5%. Expenses, including management, at 7% for 2019. Shortfall at $750 a square foot. The net operating income, $107,272. The capitalization rate, 7.5% for a capitalized and rounded value at $1,430,000. Page 9 is just a summary of the income workup. Page 10 is the cap rate table. Again, we've considered this neighborhood shopping center as part of the owner's 3 parcels that are used kind of together as one economic unit. So the range in regards to neighborhood shopping centers between the 20th and 80th percentile, 7.5 to 7.75%. But if you do look at this specific building, it's kind of built as a strip. And the range for the strip is 7 to 7.25. So we're at 7.5 for this one. Outside sources, CBRE has 6.5 to 7 for neighborhood shopping center, 6.5 to 7.5 for the strip mall. And then Stevenson just reports for retail as a whole 5 to 6%. Colliers has 6 to 7% for strip malls. And I know typically they're looking at investment grade properties. I would consider this it's new construction. It's a strip mall. I don't see a reason why an investor wouldn't look at this property. But that is the cap rate information. Page 11 is some excerpts from the Municipal Assessment Act. And just for the board's sake, the supplemental was issued effective November 21st of 2019. So it's about a month and a week or so of 2019 that we're dealing with here. And it was that information was based on the final building inspection that was done by the permit guys. So that is my presentation for the property. We're seeking confirmation of the value at $1,430,000.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Newfield, questions?
Yes, thank you. On the aerial picture, page 4, you haven't drawn in the boundaries of the subject parcel here.
Yeah, so if you look at page 3, though, you see the boundaries there.
Right, but with the overlay of the buildings. I'm just wondering if you have any dispute with what I've presented on my page 2 for the boundaries.
Page 2 of your 2019?
Yeah.
No, that looks fairly accurate.
So the subject, although it has frontage on Henderson, does not have illegal access on Henderson, correct?
Yeah, right now I think the strip that extends to Henderson, at the end there is a boulevard. I don't think that...
Right. So they have to share the access from 1114 and 1128.
Correct. Yeah, owned by the same people, but yes, they share the access. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, but excuse me. So, I mean, you did say it's one economic unit, and so I mean, I don't think we're disagreeing here. Was it fair to say that it's unlikely it would be sold on its own, considering these factors?
Most likely they would look to sell the whole economic unit, but I mean, I can't speak to the owner's intentions with the property.
Right, but if they were to sell this on its own, they would have to apply for another access.
Yeah,
which they wouldn't get it, would they?
I'm not certain. They may sell off the back unit with the other 2-unit improvement at 1114 Anderson. They could separate it down the middle, I guess is what I'm saying.
No, and I'm not disagreeing that there's possibilities. The possibilities is a joint sale. The second possibility is to register cross-access easements, and the third, the fine line, putting your blinders on, is you need your own access, and that third option is not available or do you disagree?
I'm not certain as to whether they'd be able to get approval for that or not.
Okay. So in that picture, of course, the land that's allocated to get the frontage is occupied by parking, likely for one of the other buildings, correct?
Correct.
And Starbucks beside them do they operate a drive-through?
They do have a drive-through.
Okay. The Freshie, at one point you called it a restaurant, and another point you called it, I guess what it's described in your page 4, a food. Sorry, I didn't write down the words. That it's a food delivery, food preparation site.
Yeah, I mean, it serves as a restaurant. You can go there, order food, sit down and eat. You can take out. You could get delivery from there. But it's part of a strip. It's the end unit.
Right.
But it's food services as opposed to just standard retail.
How is it physically different from the rest of the strip?
Well, they would have fire code requirements that need to be met for the food preparation. They would have a commercial kitchen that's installed, walk-in coolers, freezers, those sorts of things that are associated with food storage, HVAC upgrades that are associated with restaurant usage. Those kind of are the distinction between your normal retail and your restaurant usage or your food service.
Okay, you're aware that the fire code regulations on this class are the same now?
I'm not aware of that. So that would be the permit guys telling these guys what they need to put in.
Okay, and you mentioned coolers and freezers. Those aren't taxable, property taxable, are they? Accessible?
It depends how they're put into the property. So if they're fixtures, then absolutely it's accessible.
Okay, and did you inspect it to determine if they were fixtures?
No, I did not inspect this property in the interior. I was able to go to the exterior and look at this property, but I did not go inside.
Now, you mentioned HVAC equipment. Is there special air handling in this location?
I couldn't. I looked at the permits, and there definitely was HVAC included in the fit up permits.
But every building has HVAC, right?
Right.
What I meant was, is there additional HVAC? And I'm speaking specifically of an exhaust system and a makeup air.
Not certain.
No. And a site that makes, and I was just looking at them on the website, they make salads and smoothies. Do they even need a makeup air system?
They may. I mean, it's not just salads. There's, I mean, I've had Freshie before. They do have meats. They've had rice bowls, stuff like that.
In the microwave, right?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
But like, okay, if
based on the permit, there's a kitchen, right? So,
right. But what we're getting at is in a food service operation where you've got usually a flame or high heat generation, you need to have a makeup air and an exhaust system. They are not that type of food service operation, are they?
I can't comment on the additional. I'm not sure what the additional requirements would be.
How about your picture on page 4? Do you see a makeup air unit or an exhaust?
No, the picture that I have doesn't show anything on the roof, so it's hard to say. And I don't see anything at the front of the building that would suggest that.
At the time that this was put on the roll, were all the units occupied?
No.
And what was vacant? Do you know?
I don't recall. I know for sure that the
Gentlemen, can I interrupt for 1 second?
Sure.
Mr. Newfield, if you could confine your questions to the presentation that the city would be appreciated. And because we're getting off track here.
Well, I think it'll save some.
I know where you're going, but it's going to be part of your presentation.
No, I understand, but I just want to make sure that we're in agreement on the facts of the case.
All right.
So I have a confirmation that there was a vacant unit. That's all I was looking for.
Okay.
Now, my next question is more pertinent. On new construction, is it common to have an absorption period where there will be longer periods of vacancy until lease up?
Correct. There's going to be a lease up period for any new build. And they don't always have tenants secured prior to completion. So there's always the opportunity there that there is an absorption period for sure.
But on your page 9, you just allowed the standard vacancy of 5% then, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So we're dealing with, for this file, April 1st of 2016. This building wasn't up yet. I can't really look to the actual vacancy. That's all post-reference. It's even post-reference for the 2020 roll year. So we look to market for the rents and for the vacancy parameters. It's valued as hypothetical. It's current improvement as of the reference date, as of the economic conditions, as of the reference date. Now, we can't comment on vacancy for the subject property as of the reference date, so we use the market. And in fact, for mass appraisal in general, we don't do site-specific analysis of vacancy for each assessment. It's modeled based on what's reported to us, and then a market vacancy is applied.
All right. Well, I've been through numerous hearings in different classes of property where the assessor has stated it's a new build. So therefore, we're giving an introductory vacancy or a period of absorption time. So in this case, that has not been done, has it?
Correct.
Okay. Which of the premise IDs is the Papa John's?
I cannot tell you.
Okay, but there's a Papa John's in the site, correct?
I'm not certain of that. When I went by there the other day, I did not see a Papa John's, but
you're certain that the rent is 11.
I know that when we added it, I don't believe we contemplated another restaurant. I think we would have seen then another premise tagged with the tenant class C4. So at the time when this was added, we only had the freshie in regards to food service.
Okay. So the rent that at $27.72 is applied to freshie. There may or may not be a Papa John's in there based on your information, but it is at the C2 tenant class.
Correct. So if we were to see Papa John's go in there and we were to get them on the roll, we would likely, and I don't know if we would issue a supplemental to adjust the tenant class, but we would likely capture that in a reassessment. We would change the tenant class.
Now, you had said earlier being one economic unit. Are you aware what the rates were that were applied to the neighboring units in this year? The cap rate, I should say.
No, I don't believe I looked. It's older, right? So each component may have a different rate based on the age of the building. There's three roll numbers, potential for 3 different cap rates within the neighborhood shopping center classification, just based on age and size of the improvements. Those all play in. So no, I didn't look at the larger building to see because of those other variations.
Okay. Now, in regard to parking, did you do an analysis of the parking for this legal lot to determine how many stalls are required?
I did not. I can only comment that it was obviously would have been undertaken by the permit guys when the permit was issued. They were able to build. They do have some parking on site. What the actual numbers are, I can't tell you.
Okay. Well, is this so? You never investigated whether the site requires the participation of the adjoining units to meet the parking requirement or not?
I did not. No.
Okay. So again, I'll just go back to that same question. You've stated it's one economic unit. You're not sure about whether or not the parking is shared, but in your estimation, being one economic unit still validates the use of separate cap rates. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, just based on the age of the buildings,
Yeah,
the
okay.
age and size of the buildings. Yeah.
I understand that. We're not going to agree, but okay. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Ms. Nesbitt, questions of the assessor?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Buss?
Yes, about the vacancy, do you know how much vacancy there was when the property was put on the roll and how long those units stayed vacant?
Again, I'm not certain. I know that I am aware of 3 of the 5 units being filled at this point. They may have a 5th, or a 4th, I guess that's there, this Papa John's. But I don't know if that was information that we had when this was added to the roll. And the vacancy occurring there, again, would be post-reference to the April 1st, 2016 reference date.
Wouldn't that be kind of a physical thing for April 1st? You'd want to look and see how many tenants were there.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, there was no building there, and there wasn't this current building that was there. It was an old office building that was there. I don't really know if drawing vacancy information from the subject property is appropriate. I mean, you would have looked at it for sure, but we could have added it to the roll, and then the next week a tenant goes in. That wouldn't necessarily be reflected in the valuation, right? No, it's a market vacancy that's applied.
Yes. And you were by there the other day and you didn't see a Papa John's?
Yeah, from my recollection, I didn't see the Papa John's that's being referred to. It may be something that I missed. I'm not sure. Again, I just drove by. I went to the Starbucks that's there and drove by the property.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions.
I don't think I have any. So, Mr. Newfield, the floor is yours.
Sorry, just one follow-up question.
Okay.
Thanks. You'd said in a response to a question that you apply a market vacancy because maybe the next day a tenant might move in. So we're looking at a period of November to December. No tenants moved in during that period, did they?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. And given our current situation in the retail industry, do you foresee any tenants getting new space in the next short time?
Again, it's all post-reference, right? So it's hard to contemplate anything past the reference date. And I would suggest that we don't contemplate it. I mean, we're not contemplating the actual rent that's being gathered at this site because it's post-reference. And I feel if we're going to apply the actual vacancy, then it is kind of looking at one component of the valuation, using post-reference information to calculate a vacancy, but not using post-reference information to factor in the rents that are being collected there.
Okay, I just was wondering if nobody moved in. That's all I was wondering. Thank you.
Mr. Newfield, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I guess let me. Sorry, I got to find my report here. What our differences are is that there's nothing special about the end unit or any of the middle units. They're all the same. It's a strip. We've used $19 a foot across the board because that represents. I think the assessor and I are somewhat in agreement on the rest of the space. That represents the rent that is collected on the neighboring property. And on page 3, we have the neighboring property, and you can see that in 1128 Henderson, the rents range from a high of $20 to a low of $10, and that would be governed by, well, it's not by start date. It's unit sizes and tenant inducements, basically that factor into this. So we've used a rate at the higher end, and you notice that there are several operations in there. I'm speaking on page 3 that are very much like a Freshie. For example, the Subway is $20. M&M Meats is $19. The sushi place is $11.79. What they all have in common with Freshie is that they're the same style, predominantly takeout food. A Subway and the sushi place, you can sit down and enjoy it. It wouldn't call that a restaurant. I would call that finding a park bench to sit on and have your lunch. It's not a dining experience, so it's not food service. We also have some more rents on the bottom on Henderson Highway, and these are a mix of office, retail, and there are a few restaurants in there. The top one at 839 Henderson is a local, I think it's a pizza restaurant at 1665, and the bottom one is a Smitty's at 1550. So there's no special rent for a restaurant. What is usually the common mistake is that many restaurants, national chains especially, borrow money through the lease to finish off their site and amortize it in the lease. And that results in high rents to pay back the loan. Now, in this case, there's no evidence of this happening whatsoever. So therefore, what this means is that you cannot rely on rents derived in any model without proof that they were investigated to see if TIs were encompassed in the rent. And to be clear, the whole concept of TIs is not one we're claiming here. And if they are in the rent, they become income that's attributable to the site. That's fine. But as a comparable, they're not allowed. As a comparable to support a high rent for a restaurant. And that is the flaw in the model. We're using the actual vacancy of 19.4%. Most of these deals were written before construction began. And although they opened up in 2019, most of the deals were cut in late 2018. And so the last unit had been exposed to the market and is still vacant as of today. As a startup, an absorption, I believe this is a physical factor, because what we're doing here is we're changing the name of the product. It is not an established strip mall that has periodic vacancy. It is a startup strip mall that will have high vacancy in the beginning. And in subsequent years, when it gets fixed, then the assessor can bring it to market. Because that's the way, if you sold this on the market with this vacancy as a startup, there's no track record, there's no history. So an investor says, I don't think you're ever going to rent this. And I haven't said COVID once during this time. This is related to a normal startup. I'm just looking at the differences here, and we have a minor difference on shortfall. The assessor's at 750, and we've applied 8, and that's our estimate based on what the shortfall would be in that year. One of the things to consider is that at the assessor's tax assessment rate, the taxes will be about $40,000, which is $650 a foot just by themselves. And that's the big part of the shortfall. And after that comes utilities and management, which add $3 to it. So the actual rate based on the assessor's workup, the shortfall would be about $9. On the assumption that there is some change in the assessed value, $8 would fit in. The cap rate we're using is 8%, and just for interest, the 1128 next door is capped at 7.5%. So the difference on this property for cap rate is the I'm not disagreeing with the assessor in that, yes, it could probably be sold separately, but you've also heard the problems with that particular sale. You would have to work out an approach, whether it be contractual with the neighbor or ask for another approach from the city, which you will not get, because actually the bylaw says you can't approve another approach within, I think it's 8 meters of another existing approach, and that rate, amount differs for an arterial roadway, which Henderson is. So it could be a 30-meter restriction. So you're not going to get one. So that's one of the difficulties of sale. The next difficulty of sale is that this is at the back of the site. Remember that this is a redevelopment. After the tenant left, they spent 4 years trying to rent this property out. Nobody wanted it. There was no visibility. There were some design issues as well, and they did a rebuild, and because the previous building was one building. So at that point, they made a determination, is it cheaper for us to demise the existing building or to build it from scratch and start all over? And that's what they did. And in that 4-year period, they acquired 3 of the 5 tenants which would initiate the project. So it has always been a hard fill, a hard sell, chronic vacancy on it, and that is the issue with the visibility. You need to be accessible from the road. Now you'll notice at 1114 Henderson, which is their part of their property, Starbucks right on the front, right on the highway with the visibility. That's what real food service needs, not tucked in the back. And the last issue I was going to bring up as far as the cap rate is concerned, and how you have to consider the whole complex, is that our quick analysis, and I'm sorry, I did not present my workup, but in the brief is the parking bylaw on page 14, 15, and I believe 16. The whole complex requires 233 parking stalls based on current bylaw. And it's always based on their use. And that's actually a low estimate because I didn't include the food service operations in 1128. Food service is 1 stall per 100. Retail is 1 stall per 250. So if from looking at the overhead, it's clear that they do not have 233 parking stalls. There's some in the back and there's some in the front. Each of these units by themselves does not have capacity for parking. They would heavily lean on 1128 to provide the parking. But one of the reasons is that actually 1128 has 3 offices that qualify as office, or users that qualify as office, and their count is 1 stall per 1,000. So 1122 needs 1128 to meet the parking bylaw. Therefore, they are linked by more than just a frontage. So we think that normally a rate of 7.5 would be good, but this is inferior to 1128. Age does not come into it. What comes into it are they're competing for the same user. I mean, you can't say age is a factor when you can attract a Subway, a UPS, Ultra Cuts, M&M at 1128, and you're getting pretty much the same tenants at 1122. This is just a matter of frontage, visibility, and parking. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Colatrigio, questions of the applicant?
Yes, I do have a few questions. So just to that last comment, no consideration was given to the age, correct?
We did, well, we looked at age, but I don't believe that it's a major factor in this. The age of these units is 1120. Sorry, let me just dig up here. 1114 at the front is 2007. 1128. At the back is, well, it's got 1986 written, but your department calls it 1998.
That's the effective age. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're all in the same ballpark. And like what really matters in retail is not the age, it's the flex.
Okay.
So this same property owner has buildings all across the city. And if you can get your CRUs designed for maximum flexibility, and what that means is that if one tenant's taking 1,200 feet and you need 2,400 feet or you need more, you can build it in multiples. And then you can move the tenants around and then you can have it. The old building, which was something like 8,000 square feet, didn't have that flexibility. So that was that was obsolete.
Okay. Is it common that an owner would build a new strip on site where there's an existing strip and expect the same performance out of the new building as they have for their old inventory? Like we're dealing with a property originally built 1986. We've shown some upgrades that we have an effective age on it. But it seems odd to me that the owner would expect the same level of rent from the brand new strip that was built.
Well, I can tell you that Collier's leased up most of these units on the initial build out, and it was our project. And although it is post-reference, there's nothing extraordinary in the new rental situation. The expectation was to hope to match 1128's rents. 1114s are higher, being the frontage, with the Starbucks who dominate and have rights for drive-through, whereas the TAN-FX next door has a lower rate. So we expected the visibility, the frontage factors to, sorry about that, I didn't turn this off. You think to come into it, but it was a hard sell. And when we were leasing it up, we were looking at a lot of these are other clients of ours who have places elsewhere, and they would say, look, we need a Henderson location, and this was developed for them.
Okay. Now, just a question in regards to the vacancy. You've used the actuals. It is occurring post-reference. Why not use, if the suggestion is that there's a lease up and absorption period, what would that rate look like for a market absorption for retail space? And why wouldn't that be applied as opposed to the post-reference actuals?
Well, the concept of an absorption was, unfortunately, has been skewed crazy because of COVID. The normal absorption for something like this would be you try to get the majority of the units signed up before you build. And as you begin construction, maybe you get a few more. And then when you open the doors, the hope is to be full or just have that one, have very little left over. And then when the users in the neighborhood say, I want to be close to, I don't know, just look at this tenant list. There's related users who have good symbiotic relationships. They share clients. Then they would be looking at this. That just never happened.
Okay.
So, but the malls we look at on new builds, and I'm thinking about the Linden Ridge Shopping Center. That was a stinker. That was really bad. That was like 40% for the longest time.
Okay, but there's no information in your brief to show an absorption period or rate, correct?
As to a concept of an absorption rate for new builds, no. I think typically what we do is we look at the earnings, and what you would do, I should say, I'll tell you what you would do is you do a discount cash flow analysis. So you do a 10-year window, and then
the discounted cash flow has kind of some issues with each investor potentially has different expectations, return on investment. They have different requirements for holding right? So it's not necessary.
No, that's not what it would do. What it would do is, I can't win here. The phones keep ringing. What you would do is make an estimate of when you're going to backfill this space. Say it's in, or not backfill, to fill it, which would be year 3, let's just say, for example. But you're using a 10-year window. So then at year 5, will you lose one of the tenants? And then you take, so this is why the assessment department doesn't like it on a DCF, is that you have to factor that when your next vacancy occurs, it's going to be a big hit in 1 year. And then you have to put in extra costs for commissions and shortfall during that time period as well, and some TI build out. But then all of these get amortized over a 10-year window on the DCF. So what you're probably looking at is, 20% year 1 and 2, 20% year 6 and 7, and then in year 6, high shortfall, and in year 7, commissions and TIs. And then when you annualize it all out, you look at what the result would be over that 10-year period. But this is all forward-looking.
Okay, so I guess to focus it back into the original question, there's no information in the brief that suggests that a specific rate should be used for a lease-up period, correct?
No, and we are forward-looking with the DCF. So, okay. But now, if you extend this over to the assessment process, there is a review period in the assessment process every 2 or 3 years where you get to change the rate. So like a DCF, it would operate on that manner. So the next cycle that comes in, it's full. Then it's a normal vacancy, right? So
okay. I understand the point you're making.
Okay.
In regards to the rental rates that you've used, I notice a lot is from 1128, which again is older. Did you contemplate any newer construction?
Well, we had looked at some new construction. The problem is that a lot of it was impacted by TIs because we have the deals and we know it's done. We had seen a few that had heavy TIs. There's a particular chain restaurant we look at where we know walking in that they want about $40 a foot on a 10-year lease. And what they do with that money is they do their own improvements for their operation, non-taxable items, and that's not appropriate to the ad valorem value.
Okay. So I'm just going through the retail rental rate table.
And honestly, there hasn't been a ton of new construction unless it's been a tenant secured well in advance. Like there's not a lot asking these days.
So the rental tables that you have there, the ones that are not 1128 Henderson, they're all on Henderson. The age is vary significantly though, right? The first one I think is over 100 years old. Some of these are built in the 70s and 80s, correct?
Yeah, but the first one, the age on it is a standalone and it was acquired by one of the partners in our company. And really the rent has nothing to do with its age. It's just the location for their operation they liked.
Okay. Yeah, and then just to point out, there are a couple here that are post-reference, correct?
Oh, yeah. You know what? I didn't look at that, but yeah, I noticed that one from 17 is post-reference.
Yeah, I think there's 2 on there. Well, for the at least for the 2019 reference date. Yeah.
Yeah, you're correct. There's 2 there.
And then just looking through, I believe that was all my questions. You had confirmed that you didn't include a parking workup, right, on the stalls and stuff?
No, I didn't give you the count based on the code requirement. I did provide the bylaw. The information from the bylaw on what the requirements are. Restaurant, drinking establishment without drive-through, 1 for each 100 square feet.
Hey, yeah, no, you got it. That's yeah. No further questions.
All right. Unfortunately, I have to move my car, so we're going to take about a 5 or 6 minute break. and then we'll continue on.
I will let my dog out.
Okay, good. Okay, we'll call the hearing back to order. And I think we had just finished with Mr. Neufeld.
No, we didn't have our questions yet.
Okay, no, but I'm going to go there. Okay. Ms. Nesbitt, you have questions for Mr. Neufeld?
I do not have questions.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Buss, any questions?
Yes. On page 2, Mr. Neufeld, your map, are you with us?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, the subject property you've got with the big red dot,
Yes.
and the same people own the property to the north, is that correct?
Yeah, the L-shaped property to the north, yes.
And the property between the subject and Henderson Highway are the same owners as well?
That's correct.
Okay. So could the city merge those all into one property, and then there wouldn't be any problems with parking or with entrance?
No, well,
No. Ingress and ingress and outgress?
Well, sorry, parking and ingress is a different issue than taxation. You could easily merge the roles for taxation. But because they are all lots of record, they would need a title merge in order to share all that. And
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just wanted, there was one thing, I just wanted to check the ownership here if it was all the same, because they had different numbered. No, it's all the same company, Kildonan Village Limited.
Okay. Because shopping malls, often big shopping malls have these pad sites all over them that, couldn't be sold separately and things like that.
Yeah, we are looking at a legal restriction at this point, and although regardless if that they went to the expense and time and trouble to merge the title, it would there would be no more concerns about egress ingress, but that doesn't alleviate the parking issue. It is a bit of an overdeveloped site, and it's only because they have a bit of office going that they're able to get the necessary parking permission, meet the bylaw.
Okay. And also you mentioned, if I could quote you, the most important thing in retail like this is flex.
Yeah. If you look, for example,
let me ask a question about flex. Would you agree with me that the newer properties should be more flexible? They're designed with what the people want in mind these days?
Well, if you look at the picture on page 2, and you look at the property to the north, which is 1128, you'll notice that there's an air handling unit for every bay.
What kind of unit?
An 1128 on the rooftop units. You'll notice that each bay has a separate rooftop unit, so that space is already flex. Now, what is a not flex is I'm just looking for a nearby building I could show you if there's an overhead view. Well, the building which is not theirs, which is south of the property, just immediately south, you'll notice that it only has one set of rooftop equipment, so it was not designed to be flex.
I see. But wouldn't a newer building be designed? They would know all this.
Well, retail, yes. Retail has always been flex, and what I was saying when the assessor asked me the question is that once you were of the genre, the era where the flex became important, they're all in the same grouping. So 1128 is a flex building.
How about the subject? Is it a flex building?
Subject is a flex building, and 1114 is a flex building.
Okay. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Newfield, you're using a vacancy rate of 19.1 or 19.4. So I just did the quick calculation, and that is applicable to the one unit that is vacant there. So what unit is that? Go offhand?
I was looking it up while were away.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll give you the units that I have.
Well, there's the gym.
Freshie is 1.
Okay.
Papa John's is 2, and we're going west.
It's got one
30-minute
advanced.
No, 30-minute hit is number 3.
Okay.
Advance is number 5.
Okay.
So it's either 4 or 6.
Okay. So how long has that been vacant?
Since construction.
Okay. When did it start?
It started the spring of 2019, and
It went on the rolls November 21st.
yeah, when it went on the roll is fair.
Okay.
Sorry, I have a. I'll tell you for sure. I have another document because then, so as I mentioned, the 4 units that I just mentioned were already in place when they went to build the place, and then they added one during construction, and the other one's been vacant ever since, like since the beginning.
And you're using a cap rate of 8%, and I'm just looking at your configuration. So you possibly could go to 8.25, maybe 8.24.
Sorry, unit 4 is vacant and has been since new. So I lost my train of thought there.
Okay.
So could you repeat that question again, please?
Okay, when you do your fancy calculation in regards to cap rates, I'm just looking at the way.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So, but you're using 8%. Could you have gone to 8.25?
Well, yes, that is a more of an academic look at it, in that these are the things that people care about, and but the academics got to be proven by the market and supported. So we see a range between 8 and 8.25 on this right now, and you can see that our problems have to do with configuration, location, exposure, coverage ratio. And other than that, sure, everything's great.
Right, I can, no further question. Either party want a summary, and then we'll go to 2020? You okay?
I think I'm okay.
We're fine.
Okay?
Yep.
So Mark, whenever you're ready, you can take us through 2020.
Yes, just one moment. So for 2020, we are dealing with file number 20-880. Once again, the roll number is 0400436200. The address 1122 Henderson Highway. Roll year in question 2020 with an April 1st of 2018 reference date. The assessed value under appeal, $1,790,000. Classification is class code 60, and liability is taxable. Our records show 1 building, 5 premises, 6,200 square feet of leasable area. Page 3 again shows the same parcel view aerial photo. Page 4, again, a dated aerial photo showing the old improvement. And page 5 just showing the current improvement that's under discussion today. Page 6 and 7, again, I followed kind of the same approach, just updating the tables with some newer leases to account for the change in reference date. And again, looking at rents from the immediate area, 1128 Henderson, 1046 Henderson, 1050 Henderson, again, being older buildings, but having a range that indicates, as low as $18 a square foot to as high as $24 a square foot. And then I looked again at new inventory, and I thought that it was important to make a distinction between older inventory and new inventory. And you see in the lease rates that they are higher for the newer inventory. So the range is a bit different there. As low as $24 a square foot and as high as 38, I believe. Yeah, 38. So that's page 6 and 7 just goes over the rental comparables. And again, it's just to the consideration that it is newer space, and that newer space in the market typically is able to capture a higher rent. Page 8 of the brief is the income workup. Again, looking at the C2 premises, I think there's an argument that could be made that the rents are a little low. The range, the rates that are applied by the model, $20 ish, is kind of what they're able to get from the old inventory that's there on site. The food service, the C4 tenant class, we do have a higher rent, $30.54. That's probably closer to what the newer inventory would be able to capture. And then differences between 2019 and 2020 in the vacancy at 4%. The potential rent here, $138,134. Vacancy 4%. Expense ratio 7 versus 2. We've been through this plenty of times. You guys know the drill on that. Shortfall at $8 a square foot, and the net operating income is $127,973. Again, there is a cap rate at 7.15% for these neighborhood shopping centers in 2020, or for the April 1st, 2018 reference date. The capitalized value, $1,790,000. So page 9 is just a summary of the income workup. Page 10, again, is our cap rate table. And again, it depends on how you would look at this. I consider it as a neighborhood shopping center, considering the ownership of the other two adjacent parcels. And again, the city's at 7.15, which is the 20th percentile of the cap rate information that we have, the 80th percentile being 7.3. So same stuff that we covered for Plessis for 2018. But again, you could maybe look at this as a strip, and the strip cap rates were actually a little lower in regards to, but we haven't classified it that way. So the range we're looking at is 7.15 to 7.30 for that 20th to 80th percentile. CBRE has 6.5 to 7. And then the other outside sources don't show anything for neighborhood shopping for Q1 of 2018. Page 11 of the brief is just some excerpts from the Municipal Assessment Act. This is standard in all the briefs. And the page 12 through the back of the brief is our standard City of Winnipeg 2020 addenda package. So you guys have seen that. I won't go through it. That is my presentation for this property. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, questions?
Yes, first of all, the assessor made a comment about Plessy. I do not know what that means.
Oh, okay. It's just the file that we had prior.
Okay, can we strike that from the record? You instruct the board not to pay attention to that comment because that's not evidence presented in this case.
Oh, sure. It was just a comment to the board. Yeah. It wasn't intended as evidence.
No, I didn't watch it, and yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's fair.
Now, the questions we went over in the previous one, I'm going to assume the discussion, the answers will all be the same. Is that fair?
Yeah, a lot of the same comments that would apply.
Okay. And just for, did you know at all what the rent in Freshie is post-reference?
Yes. Well, I don't have the exact rate. I know it's north of what the model is put it in at.
So it's under the model, right?
Okay, so we haven't seen a lease, but the information that we have was reported to us by the tenant.
Okay.
But yes, I mean, there's no point getting into it because we don't have the lease, A, and B, it's post-reference.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I was just, so yeah, on that basis, I'm asking the question on the reliability of the model when a post-reference lease rent. Okay.
I mean, but we can't consider it, Rocky, because it's not in either of our evidence, right?
I'm just reliability of the model. That's all. Now, my question, my only new question here, and there is a rebuttal document. I don't know if they're going to allow it or not, but if I'll cover it. The two things I want to cover in questioning. Are you aware what the decision in 2020 was on this property for the property next door at 1128?
No, I don't think I reviewed the board decision for that one.
Now, in this case, for 2020, the assessment department did not allow a non-recoverable expense, but they did for 2018, correct?
Yeah, the 2019 roll year, we still had the 5% in. 2020 was when we made the change, and that was removed.
Okay. Now, was this change done for a market reason?
Yeah, that was based on market analysis of the new reference period, taking a look at non-recoverable expense items, and then applied to the model as a whole. So all properties that were valued using the mass appraisal model had that change implemented.
Did you look at the actuals for the other parts of this economic group as to what their non-recoverable costs are?
No, and I mean, I don't think it would be fair to, considering the large vacant office building that was on site. And that may have an impact. So, I mean, yeah, no, we didn't look at that specific property.
Well, no, that's a fair comment, but they did submit for 1128 and 1114 non-recoverable expenses, did they not?
They may have. I can't comment on it.
And from that perspective, then you don't know if anything changed, if suddenly overnight they stopped having non-recoverable costs?
No, and I can't comment to the new building as to whether or not management is recovered through the leases, because again, we A, they're post-reference, and B, we don't have the leases.
All right. Those are my new questions then, and the rest we're just assuming stands. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nesbitt, any questions of the assessor?
No questions.
Thank you. Mr. Buss?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Newfield, the floor is yours.
Okay, sorry, I just need just 30 seconds. I just wanted to find something that I had been reading earlier. And plus my dog will stop sleeping. Okay, thank you. So our presentation is fairly similar as before. We just bumped the rents to $20, which corresponded with the rents being generated both on the facility next door and other ones in the neighborhood. And you'll see that the rents we presented on our page 3 are probably the same as the last one. A bit of laziness, but also we were just covering both reference years. So as we differ from the assessors just basically on the one rent for the Freshie unit. They're a bit higher than us for 19. They were a bit lower than us. But again, there is no difference in the rents, and this is not post-reference information. This has to do with a physical building. There is no rental disparity on the actual rents, post-reference rents, because the rents were made on the basis of the real estate. So there is no difference between unit 1 to unit 5, maybe $1 or $2 here or there. Again, we use the same vacancy. So just to go over what I was saying earlier in questioning, there are 5 units in here. I was checking the notes. 3 were rented as construction began with commencement of it. That was Advanced, Freshie, and Papa John's. The gym came on 6 months later during construction as it was coming to an end. And Unit 4 has remained vacant for the entire existence of this property and will likely remain so today. This is for information only. I mean, we're not making a COVID argument. 2 of these units aren't even paying rent right now because of what's happened. Now, why I think that's important is the assessor made a comment, well, the market will change and they'll lease it up. In general terms, I would agree with him, but it's not going to, not for the rest of this cycle. I think they can just wait until the next cycle, and by then, hopefully a tenant has been secured and then they can assess it. Right now, based on the physical condition, as of 2020 and the reference market data as of 2018, no one is going to buy it and assume I'm going to get full vacancy. Remember that the market definition is willing seller, willing buyer at the year, but based on the physical conditions in 2020. You got a physical vacancy. It's caused by a physical problem. It will impact the viability. This is more so on a unit like this. And one of the interesting things about the COVID thing, as we learn more and more about it, is the government assistance programs will not be extended to new leases. To get the money, you have to have been in operation the previous year. Again, we're not going down that path today. I think it's fair enough just to say that this is new building. It's going to take a while to absorb. Now we know that's going to be a lot longer. Safely go through this current assessment cycle, and they can deal with it later. Again, the concept of the management or non-recoverables, as they say, the assessment department with a stroke of the pen decided it no longer existed. It exists. Now, I sent you some rebuttal information, and the reason I believe I can enter it is because the assessor made a verbal comment that these are one economic unit. So
I haven't shared it with them yet.
Okay.
Are you okay with a board order being submitted as rebuttal, Mr. Chair?
What does it pertain to, Mr. Neufeld?
Well, the assessor mentioned that these are one economic unit, 11, 28, 22, and 14. So this is the board order from 1128.
Well, it's a separate title, is it not?
You are correct, but and that's why normally I shouldn't be allowed to bring it in, because then I'm just arguing assessments. But under the rules of evidence, when somebody makes a verbal statement, you have to extend my ability to rebut. And the verbal statement was one economic unit.
Well, I don't think that's the case. I mean, that could be. I think it could be construed as an incorrect fact. And
well, I'll move on, and I'm not going to waste your time on it. Okay. And I'll just slip it in somewhere and verbally. But anyway, non-recoverables. On the second and third last pages are the Colliers Management Expense Study that was done in response to the city's concept that they don't exist anymore. On the pages marked 2 and 3, at the bottom of page 2 is now there's a small typo here that I'll explain to you, but at the bottom of page 2 there's a grouping of 6 properties. These are owned by the same owner, and I've grouped them together. They're non-recoverables. First of all, number the second one down that shows an NOI of 632,166. Their non-recoverables are 7.73%. That is 1128 Henderson by itself. Immediately below that is 1114 Henderson, 133,676. The non-recoverables are 6.7%. Moving to the next page, the second entry in the top page, that is a typo. That was the date that this was submitted, not the statement date. The statement date was for 2018, where it says 662,764. That is 1128 Henderson. Their non-recoverables are 10.19%. So these are the actuals, non-recoverables for this site. They exist. The market says they exist. The board order, which I asked you to look at, agreed that they should have been applied on the adjacent property, and the assessor said they are one economic unit. So you all know the history of non-recoverables, and I'm going to stop my debate there. I can say that it was split decisions this year. The majority of the decisions went to applying the non-recoverables, either in changes and recommendations made on other factors or on outright board orders putting them back in. We know it's going to the municipal board. The assessment department is wrong. They exist. The only jurisdiction in the world that thinks they don't exist is the city of Winnipeg. The province does not agree with that position, nor does any other jurisdiction in Canada. So we put them in at 5%. The shortfall, I went over that ground before. This is our estimate of what the shortfall would be with a change in assessment. Again, we're putting a rate of 8% in on this for pretty much the same reasons as discussed earlier. And I'm trusting that everything we said on the previous appeal will carry forward. And incidentally, I thought I was so smart and clever putting it in as rebuttal. I noticed that on page 4 of my evidence in chief, I have entered all of this information in. And page 4 was that order, which you can or can't look at, whatever you choose to do. 7.75% plus non-recoverables. The bottom are some breakdowns of actual, this is Neptune Management, the ownership group of their retail operations. So you can see that they're mean, and this is just for the one reference here, April of 2017. The mean and median 13.8, 11.6% for their non-recoverables. So the world isn't going to say, I'm going to go sell my property. I'm not going to apply non-recoverables in my valuation for the sale. And the purchaser just says, well, good luck there, because I am. You can't ignore it. Thank you. That's my presentation.
Thank you. Mark, questions of Mr. Newfield?
I do. So just in regards to the non-recoverables, I think most of the valuation stuff we've gone over in the previous file, so I think the same questions apply. But in regards to the non-recoverables, page, I guess, 4 of the brief, the non-recoverables of Neptune Management Retail Properties table for 2018. That's a 2018 statement with 8 months of post-reference information factored into that, or?
No. What we did on this one and is that we went back and looked at the historical information. When we say for 2018, would be for the 2018 reference year. And I don't know, sorry, I didn't do this up. I don't know how 1122 slipped in there. That must be a prior year that is in there.
So, yeah, just to, because going to the back of the brief, Collier's management expense study effective June 1st, 2019, and does appear to include a significant amount of post-reference statements included.
Right, and that what happened is my intern did not understand the concept, and we did this in a rush.
So I guess I would just ask the board to remove any post-reference.
No, they're not post-reference. They're mislabeled wrong. I gave my intern a stack of statements from that were in the reference year, and I told her to date them and put them in, and she put on the date that they were submitted in some cases instead of the statement date.
Okay, so when you're looking at the ones that say December of 18, those are the statement as of December of 2018?
No, I picked all of these out of the files myself.
Okay.
So I know the rule.
But none of the statements are here, right?
No.
You don't really know.
It was a pile about this high, okay? But I picked these out myself. I went through every file we had of a income producing property, and we took their statements out, and I gave them to my intern and said, table these for me, please. And
okay. I would suggest maybe then updating the table, because I mean, for the board's purposes, right? They're going to look at it and go statement date as of December 19, December 18. That looks post-reference. So.
I agree with you. It looks bad, and on our priority list, it's well. I was listening to the board discussing earlier about life in general, about what little's going on, but I think for ourselves and the assessors, we've never been busier with the municipal board. So
no, I agree with we have been busy. It's just it needs to be clear, right? Without the supporting documents, it's hard to say. And then on the back of the brief, it also says the time range is between December 2012 and December 2019. So that also suggests that there's post-reference material in there.
No, and I agree with the optics are bad, but on the other hand, I did not use any information that was not in the hands of the assessment department originally.
Right, but we wouldn't look at it unless it meets the reference date requirements, right? Like we may have had it, we may have post-reference information for this property, but we can't really present it, and the board can't really contemplate it either.
Well, it is labeled wrong. It is within the reference period. And even if you struck out the ones that you believed weren't, it still shows that before April 1st, 2018, there were significant non-recoverables in investment properties. After there were significant, nothing changed on April 1st, 2018 in the market. The model is flawed.
Okay, I just, the comments were in regards to the table and the written write-up at the back, right? In regards to all the other questions from the previous file apply, I think I'm okay with that.
Okay.
I thank you. Lynn, any questions of Mr. Neufeld?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no questions.
Welcome. Mr. Buss, questions of Mr. Neufeld?
Yes, I have a question on the cap rates, Mr. Neufeld. On page 19 of your brief, this Mr. Robert Pruto has the cap rate for retail at 6.75%. And you're asking
page what?
You're asking us to change it to use 8%. So you're asking us to move it 1% and a quarter.
Hang on, let me just get the page.
Page 19 of your brief.
I have I notice here that it's.
Let me read the, let me
this-
finish the
Can I
question.
just show you this page?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, there's many things to consider here. Number one, Mr. Prito did not create these cap rates. They were created by the investment department. Because he's an appraiser, he gets to author the annual report to the investment community. These are advertising. These are not rates. This is
Why do you
what
have them in your brief if they're not rates?
it is the intent of this product is to advertise in the market and to say this is what the possibility is if you come and sell your building with us. These are not achieved rates. And when you look at the retail rates that are listed here, and then the definitions on 2 pages later, then you have to say, do you meet the definitions? So the retail we have listed, regional power, community, strip mall. Then 2 pages further, the strip, 10 to 15 years old, major chain supermarket. None here for us. Regional mall, 300,000, 600,000 square feet. None here for us. Community mall, 150,000 to 200,000 square feet. Not here. This is not covered in that report. Moving on to the third problem with it is that these are calculated from an estimate where the investment group in our office, who do have a few achieved sales, take the entire cost of acquisition, which includes land transfer fees, commissions, expenses after purchase, and call that the base for their cap rate. And in effect, that's not the same way we're doing it here today, nor is it the same way an appraiser is supposed to do it. So that's why. Now,
on from what he says here that you've included in your brief.
If you
It
move
says
forward, page
the
here.
demand for multi-tenant retail properties remains steady through 2017 and is expected to remain strong through 2018. That was written before pre-COVID, which you said you weren't going down there, but you sort of did. But there was a good. He's calling this multi-tenant retail properties. Is that what we have? Multi-tenant retail properties?
No, I told you, I already said, this property, if you look at the definitions, does not meet the standards for what he's looking at.
Well, I think it's multi-tenant retail property that we have here.
Okay, go back, go page forward, 2 pages. From the same report, benchmark definitions under retail. See on the right-hand side. That's what I just read to you. They do not meet the standards for that type. This is not what we're reporting on.
Well, no, these aren't multi-tenant things that he's talking about now. But anyway, I just wonder why it's in your brief.
Well, because there is some basis and foundation for it, because if you page ahead one more page to the one in gray, this is, after I had a chance to look at the achieved rates, this is what we would be seeing in retail. And you'll notice there that in this case, the strip mall range from a low of 7 to a high of 8. Once, when we're dealing with the same, converting them to an appraisal and assessment standard rather than a broker's sales blurb. So the real range is 7 to 8%. We're not disputing that. And I don't think the assessor's not disputing it either. Both of us are in the 7 to 8% range. He's saying lower, I'm saying higher.
Can I ask a clarifying question based on that answer?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm just, what would cause you to go to the high end of the range for new retail? Well, why not the low end of the range?
Well, the high end of the range was, as I'd answered before, is that the configuration, the fact that it was rearage, there was a parking shortage, there's no visibility.
Okay, I got you. I got you.
The interesting thing about new construction, everyone thinks it should be higher. I disagree, because if you have new construction, you don't have income growth potential. With an older property, you have the opportunity to move your tenants upward. A lot, especially if you've got a whole bunch of old leases on the property. A new one, there's nothing there. There's no income growth potential.
Yeah, you answered my question. Thanks, Rocky.
Well, I have no more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Either party want summary?
No,
Summarize?
thank you.
I do.
Okay.
Firstly, thank you very much, Mark. It's always a pleasure. Mr. Buss, I hope you know that I just enjoy sparring with you, and your questions are very interesting. And perhaps because we've known each other in the past, I feel a little more open to be more difficult, not more difficult, but to disagree with you. Nothing is meant by it. We do have, the issue is, number one, should the rents be the same? There's no physical difference. They should be. Should you apply the vacancy? I don't know what choice we have. It's a new build. You have to deal with the vacancy. It's a physical feature. The non-recoverables, or as the city called it, management rate, nothing's changed in the real world. You know the issues this year. As far as the cap is concerned, I think Mark's last question was pertinent. We're both in the 7 to 8% range. I went to the higher end of the range because I don't think a rearage property with a parking difficulty is something that is going to jump on the market and it's going to sell. You know, I think the front unit with the Starbucks probably has greater potential than the rear unit, and that's just common sense. Thank you very much for your time.
I thank you both for your presentations, and that concludes our hearing. Results very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you.
You too.